What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. As always, I'm your host, Zach Cronin, and unlike previous episodes, we do not have a bunch of stuff to talk about today. In fact, we are only going to discuss one topic, and that is the Republicans passing the fuck you, bitch, I hope you die bill. It went through the House of Representatives yesterday. It is likely going to be signed by Donald Trump today on July 4th. I don't have a full length show for you guys today because I leave for vacation in less than 24 hours and because I am a S tier procrastinator. I only started packing yesterday. Because I'm going on vacation, do not expect anything full length for the next 2 weeks or so. However, I will be sneaking away to film standalone videos depending on the magnitude of the news, which, if these first 6 months are anything to go off of, I will be doing that probably every couple of days. But let's stop beating around the bush, because who gives a fuck about my personal life when there are millions of people who are going to be considerably worse off with the passage of this bill. How did we get here? Earlier this week, the big beautiful bill, as the Republicans are calling it, passed through the United States Senate by a one vote margin, the tiebreaker being Jefferson Davis Vance. It then went back to the House of Representatives. This was a different version than the one that was already approved. It also snuck through the House of Representatives by like a 2 or 3 vote margin. I do have an article here that will give us the specifics on that. I am a big fucking dumbass and actually thought that some of the Republicans in the House would vote against this bill, considering some of them were very vocal about how they didn't like the original bill that was proposed and they regretted their vote on it. But of course, they're all fucking cowards and pussies and have no backbone. And why would they do anything that is beneficial for their constituents when they can just dick ride the president of the United States? As I said, it is going to President Trump's desk to sign. This is his landmark legislation of his second term. It is basically an extension of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, except on steroids. This is a neoliberal's wet dream. I do not say this lightly. I am not exaggerating with this statement. This bill is the most damaging piece of domestic legislation that has ever passed through the government of the United States. It is quite possibly the most damaging piece of legislation ever. However, United States foreign policy kills like millions of people over the course of each decade. But in terms of harm inflicted upon the domestic population, there is nothing that even comes close to this. This bill basically melts poor people and the working class, so that way your favorite billionaire, you making $37,000 a year, your favorite billionaire can go and buy another fucking yacht, and so that Jeff Bezos can have another $200 million wedding when his wife inevitably divorces him for being a fucking creepy asshole. This tweet from Warren Gunnels says, Trump's big, beautiful bill would end healthcare for 16 million Americans, shut 25% of nursing homes, cause 51,000 people to die every year, take food from 2 million kids, and 1.7 million blue-collar jobs, and Pell Grants for 1.4 million, all to pay for a $975 billion tax break for the 1%. There is also the debt that it would add to the deficit to the tune of $3.3 trillion. This, of course, happens because the Republicans are accelerating spending for the military-industrial complex and also ICE, while also cutting taxes for the hyper-wealthy and corporations. There are very minor tax cuts happening for lower and middle income earners, but of course, those are going to sunset after 3 years. This also, of course, includes no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, which will shutter in 2028, and of course don't really provide the same level of benefit for lower and middle income earners as those massive tax breaks do for the 1%. There's a lot to focus on with this bill. obviously, the ending of healthcare for almost 17 million Americans. There are no longer any green energy tax credits, which also goes into the loss of blue collar manufacturing jobs, because in many states, solar energy, wind energy, alternative energy sources were becoming larger and larger portions of the economy due to these tax incentives. So you had people who were able to open up businesses, you have manufacturing jobs that would open up, all sorts of positive benefits from that, and Donald Trump ends that fucking immediately. We do also have the increased budgets for ICE, which I spoke about in a recent episode when it passed through the Senate. ICE is being funded 20 times more after this bill than previously. Their budget, I think this year, was $2.2 billion. That is going up to $45 billion. With this newfound funding, ICE has a larger budget than 99% of militaries across the world. There are only a handful of nations whose military budgets are larger than ICE. That includes the United States, China, and Russia. I'm also probably forgetting like South Korea or something, but that is extraordinarily frightening, because ICE has no fucking reason to even exist, let alone be funded to the tune of $45 billion. And if you think that that is only going to be used to crack down on undocumented migrants, you are sadly mistaken. You are remarkably naive. It starts with undocumented immigrants before eventually moving to people who criticize the administration, to people who criticize Israel. ICE is now going to be a full-blown Gestapo. They are going to be the SS. They are going to be basically a paramilitary group that is used to silence dissidents. If you're not awoken to that fact, you should wake up fucking immediately, because they will come for you at one point. The most damaging pieces of this legislation include the massive cuts to Medicaid and to food stamps. We are going to dive into that after we peruse this article from The Guardian, which has statements from multiple Democratic representatives, including AOC, Rashida Tlaib. AOC says, "A dark day for our country. Democrats furious over Trump's bill's passage." AOC condemned bill's expansion of immigration enforcement and cuts to social benefits. Democrats have erupted in a storm of outrage over the passage of Donald Trump's budget bill, delivering a scathing critique that offered signs of the attack lines the party could wield against Republicans in next year's midterm elections. Except the establishment Democrats are not going to fucking do any positive, or they're not going to do the appropriate messaging in regards to this. There are only like 5 or 6 Democrats who are actually going to utilize what's going on in this bill. Like Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, these fucking losers are not going to have any idea of how to attack Republicans with this bill, because ultimately folks like that are beholden to the same people and the same beneficiaries who are going to experience these tremendous benefits. Like, what the fuck is Hakeem Jeffries doing holding a baseball bat in his office? You are not Barry Bonds, dude. You are not Aaron Judge. You are not a fucking force to be reckoned with in electoral politics. You're a fucking bum. Straight up. Party leaders released a wave of statements after the sweeping tax and spending bills passes on Thursday, revealing a fury that could peel paint off a brick outhouse. I want to just piggyback off of what I previously said. The Democrats have had this ammunition ready for months now. There have been dozens of analyses conducted that highlight how fucking dangerous this bill was, and they were still not using that in their line of attacks. Only people like Bernie Sanders were saying that this bill is going to kill 51,000 people a year. Only people like AOC were highlighting that. Only people like Andy Bashir were highlighting that. And it's because the Democratic Party does not fucking care. Hakeem Jeffries is fucking useless when it comes to communicating how atrocious and how dangerous this legislation is. Quote, Today, Donald Trump and the Republican Party sent a message to America: if you're not a billionaire, we don't give a damn about you, said Ken Martin, the DNC chair. It's funny because Ken Martin is the same guy who was like, no, we actually like billionaires, but only the good billionaires. So do with that information what you will. While the GOP continues to cash their billionaire donors' checks, their constituents will starve, lose critical medical care, lose their jobs, and yes, some will die as a result of this bill. Democrats are mobilizing and will fight back to make sure everybody knows exactly who is responsible for one of the worst bills in our nation's history. The bill's narrow passage in the House on Thursday, with no Democratic support and only 2 no votes from Republicans, which came from Thomas Massie of Kentucky and Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, quote, is not normal, wrote Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. AOC highlighted the contradictions in the bill that Democrats can be expected to campaign on over the next 2 years, pitting its spending on immigration enforcement against the loss of social benefits for working-class Americans. She noted that Republicans voted for permanent tax breaks for billionaires while allowing a tax break on tips for people earning less than $25,000 a year to sunset in 3 years. This part of the bill is also just fucking stupid. As a hospitality worker, as someone who earns money off of tips, there are infinitely more ways that the people in Washington D.C. could improve the material conditions of somebody like myself, of other people who are servers, bartenders, baristas. You could do things like abolish the sub minimum wage so that people aren't earning, in some states, $2.13 an hour. New York State is one of the few states that has a sub-minimum wage that is only slightly below the regular minimum wage, but you could just abolish it in general. You could, of course, have universal childcare that removes one expense from people because, again, there are parents who work these jobs. You could, of course, strengthen labor rights so that these people can unionize like how they do over in Europe. No tax on tips doesn't fucking do anything. It's a talking point. It's stupid. It's fucking stupid. She also noted that cuts to Medicaid expansion will remove tipped employees from eligibility for the health insurance program and remove subsidies for insurance under the Affordable Care Act. This bill will also reduce food assistance benefits in total to the tune of $1.1 trillion, nearly. Quote, I don't think anyone is prepared for what they just did with ICE, AOC wrote on Blue Sky. This is not a simple budget increase. It is an explosion, making ICE bigger than the FBI, the U.S. Bureau of Prisons, the DEA, and others combined. It's setting up to make what's happening now look like child's play, and people are disappearing. Many critics referred to the choice remarks made by Republicans in the run-up to the bill's passage that displayed an indifference to their voters' concerns. Senator Mitch McConnell was reported by Punchbowl News to have said to other Republicans in a closed-door meeting last week, quote, I know a lot of us are hearing from people back home about Medicaid, but they'll get over it. Mitch McConnell, J.D. Vance, who said people losing their health care is immaterial, you guys can go fuck yourselves. You're losers. You're cowards. Hell is not hot enough for you. There are no words to describe how depraved and sickening you guys are. You are just abominations to the human race. And even more so because, of course, these people are Christian. These people are hyper-religious. You are an abomination to the teachings of Jesus Christ and the teachings that are in the Bible. You are willingly killing your constituents. Also that Jeff Bezos can bust another fucking nut on your back. And Republican Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa, speaking at a combative town hall in Parkersburg in late May, responded to someone in the audience shouting that people will die without coverage by saying, quote, people are not, well, we're all going to die, a response that drew groans. I'm surprised that she didn't get fucking tomatoes thrown at her. Cuts to Medicaid feature prominently in the Democratic reaction to the bill. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib described the bill as, quote, disgusting and, quote, an act of violence against our community. She said, quote, Republicans should be ashamed for saying just get over it because we're all going to die. They are responsible for the 50,000 people who will die unnecessarily every year because of this deadly budget. There's no sugarcoating it. This is a dark day for our country, wrote Senator Raphael Warnock. Republicans in Washington have decided to sell out working people. As a result, millions will lose their health care, and many millions more will see their premiums go up. Rural hospitals and nursing homes across Georgia will be forced to close. Children will be forced to go hungry so that we can give billionaires another tax cut. but budget hawks on the left and the right have taken issues with the effects this budget will have on the already considerable national debt. Quote, in a massive fiscal capitulation, Congress has passed the single most expensive, dishonest, and reckless budget reconciliation bill ever, and it comes amidst an already alarming fiscal situation, wrote Maya McGuinness, the president of the Oversight Organization Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, in reaction to the House's passage of the bill. Quote, never before has a piece of legislation been jammed through with such disregard for our fiscal outlook, the budget process, and the impact it will have on the well-being of the country and future generations. I don't know why people are like surprised that Republicans increase the debt considerably every time they're in office. Every fucking Republican president since the 90s, I think, or at least since Bush in 2000, have increased the national debt while Democrats have reduced it. It's very simple. It comes down to basic mathematics. While both of these parties engage in spending, because obviously you have to spend money on things like social services, you unfortunately have to spend money on things like the military, Democrats generate more tax revenue, whether it's on corporations or high earners. For example, the new corporate tax rate is 21%, down from 35%. The minimum the minimum tax on corporate profits of 15% no longer exists. So Republicans are generating this money off of the backs of lower and middle income earners. There's no getting around it. If you are a member of the bottom 90%, if you are making fewer than 200 grand a year, or even like 500 grand a year, you are going to wind up paying more money just to live than if you're in the top 1%, whether that be on healthcare costs, whether that be with the rising costs of goods and services due to inflation and due to tariffs. You are going to have less money in your pocket regardless of how your taxes may or may not be cut, because ultimately that half a percentage point of a tax cut that you receive will be offset by the additional money that you have to spend just to fucking live. House Republicans just voted again to jack up costs, gut healthcare, and reward the elite with tax breaks, wrote the House Majority PAC, a Democratic fund. They had a chance to change course, but instead they doubled down on this deeply unpopular, toxic agenda. They'll have no one to blame but themselves when voters send them packing and deliver Democrats the House Majority in 2026. Republicans didn't pass this bill for the people, wrote Jasmine Crockett, a Texas Democrat. They passed it to please Trump, protect the powerful, and push cruelty disguised as policy. The penultimate paragraph here, I think, is a little bit of cope. I say a little bit of cope because there is certainly, and I know that this is probably very libbed up for me to say, I recognize that I may be a little bit too optimistic. There is a chance that a bunch of these Republicans get voted out of office in 2026 by Democrats. The caveat here, however, is that that is only going to happen if the Democrat running is a progressive Democrat. Establishment Democrats will not have the ass whooping that they think they will in 2026. They're already feeling like they are going to earn the vote of people just by the fact that Republicans passed this legislation. They ultimately think that these people are fucking stupid. The Democratic establishment believes that people who live in these Republican districts are fucking stupid, when in reality, they are disenfranchised from the Democratic Party because the Democrats are the very same party that allowed this to happen. They did not put up the appropriate counter to this bill. There is still a tremendous sense of entitlement from establishment Democrats, and they will be sorely mistaken come 2026 if they don't actually embrace the progressive wing of the party and start endorsing candidates like Greg Casar and Maxwell Frost and AOC and Zohran Mamdani. The progressive wing of the party is the only way that the Democratic Party will continue to win elections in these upcoming years. The establishment point of view, it's gone. The centrist Democrat, the moderate Democrat, they have no fucking standing anymore. You have to compel the electorate to vote for you. You have to do what Bernie and AOC are doing right now and have been doing, and going to these swing districts and telling them why what Trump is doing is bad and just how you are going to fight it. You will need strong messaging about building a more robust and more equitable healthcare system. Not just returning Medicaid and Medicare to where it was, but expanding it and covering everybody regardless. Just a single payer healthcare system. You are going to have to run on higher minimum wage because let's not forget, the federal minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour. You're going to have to run on universal childcare. You are going to have to run on the same measures that people in red states vote overwhelmingly for when they are on the ballot, like in Missouri, where they voted to raise the minimum wage, where they voted for paid time off. That is the only way that Democrats are going to actually get Republicans out of office. You have to compel these people to vote for you. They are not just going to show up and vote Democrat because the fucking Democrats have not done anything for them since the fucking 1960s, since Lyndon B. Johnson. The focus of this bill, at least for me right now, is the gutting of Medicaid, the impact that this is going to have on everybody. Everybody. It doesn't matter if you live in rural Kentucky. It doesn't matter if you live in New York City. It doesn't matter if you live in Florida, California, Chicago. It doesn't fucking matter. The cuts to Medicaid will not only lead people to having less health care and lead people to fucking die, it will also make hospital waits and it will also lengthen wait times in urban areas and suburban areas because these hospitals are going to experience increased volume. Furthermore, your insurance premiums are going to go up. You are still going to wind up paying for people to have health care. Except now, it is going to be an additional fucking payment that you have to make in terms of your insurance premium instead of just it already coming out of your fucking paycheck. In the United States, roughly a fifth of the country lives in what is considered rural areas. That is 60 million people or so, give or take. In these rural areas, healthcare access is extremely limited. In some instances, there may only be one clinic that these people can go to. This is essential. These clinics and these hospitals in rural areas are essential to the communities that they serve because otherwise people won't be able to get preventative care. They won't be able to get emergency care. It might be a 35, 45-minute drive to a hospital, perhaps even an hour or two, depending on just how rural of an area you live in. There's also the economic ramifications from this. Not only do these hospitals serve people in these communities, but oftentimes hospitals tend to be massive employers in rural areas. In Alabama, I think it's the University of Alabama, Birmingham. That's obviously the college, but all of like the additional facilities that accompany the college, including medical facilities and research centers, are responsible for like the second highest. They're the second highest employer in Alabama. Even places like downstate New York, like Long Island, the hospitals provide like thousands of jobs, even upwards of like 10, 11, 12,000 jobs. It is going to be an absolute fucking disaster. This focuses on rural Tennessee, but you will see this all across the country, even if it's Oklahoma, if it's upstate New York, if it's rural Florida, it doesn't fucking matter. This Tennessee is reflective of the state of rural hospitals all across the country.
That's a scary, scary prospect.
New tonight, concerns over the big, beautiful bill in D.C. Tonight, the U.S. House of Representatives working to marry its bill with the Senate version.
But both contain cuts to Medicaid that insiders worry could close some of Tennessee's rural hospitals. Fox 17 News' Karen Aguilar joining us live in Lebanon with the possible impacts here.
That's right, Megan. And I'm actually in front of Vanderbilt Wilson County Hospital behind me. It's one of 9 that researchers say could close. People I spoke with in this rural community tell me if it does close, it could bring devastating consequences.
You can hear me, Joe.
Lisa Pariseau and her husband Paul moved to this part of Lebanon to be 10 minutes away from Vanderbilt Wilson County Hospital. It is the only hospital in the area.
Because my husband and I both have underlying health issues at our age.
Her husband of 44 years has had some emergency room visits.
And recently he had a very scary fall where he hit his head, he passed out, I called 911, but he's on a blood thinner. So the EMTs got here really fast.
But researchers say Vanderbilt Wilson County Hospital, along with 8 other rural hospitals across Tennessee, might close. Thanks.
It's blurred. Now, that part was blurred. It was a closure of rural hospitals. But even through the blur,
with
you
8
can
other
see
rural hospitals
there are some that are going to experience double-digit closures. California, 28. Indiana, 12. Kentucky, Louisiana, 35 and 33, respectively. Holy fuck, dude. That's insane. Oklahoma, 23. My home state of New York, 11. New Mexico, 15. Now, California and New York are going to be, well, California, I'm actually surprised that it's only 11 for New York. But a state like California, it's a massive state, not only in terms of population, but also in terms of like actual landmass. Still, 28 is a fucking enormous number. Now, imagine Louisiana, a state that is what, like 10 times smaller than California? I don't know the size or whatever. 33. It's like 40% of Louisiana residents are on fucking Medicaid. And Mike Johnson, the goddamn Speaker of the House, was smiling and dancing as this fucking bill passed.
Across Tennessee might close, thanks to Medicaid cuts found in the big, beautiful bill.
I believe it would be a matter of life or death because I know, especially with strokes, and because my husband also has AFib and stroke is one of the complications.
These cuts put rural hospitals at risk because of changes in how states can raise money for Medicaid. The National Rural Health Association weighing...
It's twofold. I understand that this lady is talking about, I guess that would be considered reactive care, emergency room visits. But if people don't have access to health care when they're younger, they can't go see a physician. They don't have a primary doctor to go to ensure that they don't experience these complications later on, at least the preventable complications. I understand that things happen, but preventative care is still necessary. So that way you can go see your doctor and he's like, oh, okay, you have this, this, and this. We're going to do this, that, and whatever, alter your lifestyle, change your diet. We're going to put you on, this preventative medication for a little bit, whatever. Healthcare is a sector that impacts everybody. And even if you are young and healthy, like someone like myself, you can develop certain conditions, like what I've been dealing with recently, where I've had to go to where I've had to go see a hematologist 3 times, and I had to go to an infusion center to get an antibody treatment. Like, shit happens. These things come up, but there needs to be adequate accessibility.
In saying those cuts would put, quote, significant financial pressure on hospitals in rural states where many hospitals are already at risk of closure. But Tennessee Congressman John Rose denies that.
I think that the fears are unfounded. I think this will actually be good for our rural hospitals.
Yeah, this guy's a fucking dumbass. He's a fucking idiot. He's just like, he's looking at all the data, all the evidence, and is like, actually, no, my vibes say that this is gonna be fine.
Tells me even if there were concerns, changes have already been made to the bill to try to address them.
The package that came back from the Senate actually has a rural health fund that will provide over $50 billion in new assistance targeted toward our rural hospitals.
He tells me the bill is meant to cut spending by putting able-bodied older people to work.
All right, we're getting into work requirements now. So that's bullshit. Well, it's not bullshit, but it It's not the entire picture. There is that rural hospital fund, $50 billion. However, it is now up to the states to cover the rest of the cost, whereas before, Medicaid did that. Why does Medicaid cover the cost of people's treatment? Well, because the people can't afford it, nor can the state afford it, right? You can't expect the state government of Louisiana or Missouri to offset the rest of these medical costs because they don't have the appropriate funds to do so. You can't reduce Medicaid funding and then expect low-income states to make up the difference. I don't even know if certain high-income states can make up the difference. Certainly, New York and California would have an easier time, but even still, like, there are so many other things for the state budget to manage. You simply need federal assistance in some cases.
If you call them cuts, I would call them eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse.
I'm all
Yeah,
for
that's not going to play, dude. That line is not going to play in elections going forward. It's simply not. When you not only consider this, but you consider like the cuts to pediatric cancer research, when you consider the cuts to veterans mental health care, people are not going to fucking buy that slogan anymore.
trimming the fat, but it's the people that are dramatically affected.
A spokesperson for Vanderbilt Medical Center tells me they don't have any plans to close regional hospitals. Reporting live in Lebanon, Karen Aguilar, Fox 17 News, your Code Red station.
They may not have any plans because obviously, like, listen, if you're a fucking hospital, if you're a healthcare provider, you are going to provide healthcare. Like, that is your job. That is your sworn duty. Come hell or high water, you are going to treat people. But ultimately, you need help. You need financial help. And the federal government is taking that away. Part of what plays into 17 million people losing healthcare is there are going to be some people who are kicked off because of work requirements. This gentleman alluded to it. They didn't really dive deep into it in this video. That's the work requirements thing. It's bullshit. It's poppycock. It's not real. States have tried this before. Ultimately, it doesn't work because the majority of people who are on Medicaid are able-bodied and not only willing to work, but actively working. They are on Medicaid because their job does not offer them health insurance, or they don't make enough to qualify for private health insurance like me when I was on Medicaid. My job didn't offer it to me, nor did I make enough to qualify. So I was on Medicaid. However, the work requirements don't account for people who are older, able-bodied, and able to work, so they say, but aren't legally disabled. These are people who are anywhere between the ages of 50 to 64. These folks may physically not be able to work or may not want to work if they've worked, 30 years doing construction or whatever. Those are the people who are going to be kicked off because of work requirements. Additionally, it is nearly impossible to verify these work requirements. And even if it is streamlined more, there isn't going to be enough resources for the agency to actually go through all of these cases. It's not about people being lazy. It's about the federal government just simply not wanting to provide healthcare to people because they would rather give Bill Gates another fucking helicopter or another fucking private jet. The last thing that we're going to talk about is the impact of Medicaid cuts on specifically red states, specifically the state of Kentucky, because I have an interview from Andy Beshear on MSNBC, my new boo, my new second favorite hopeful to be president in 2028. It's between him and AOC. And I really like Andy Beshear because he is a fascinating politician. He is the most popular governor in the country. He's the Democratic governor of one of the reddest states in the country. And it's all because he takes an empathetic approach to politics. He's not like, he's very moderate coded, very much like Tim Walz is. You know, he's a Christian, he's a Bible thumper, but he also understands that, you know, his faith teaches him to be kind to others and to be helpful and to look after the poor, the ill, and the downtrodden. He was on MSNBC and basically just started shitting all over Republicans.
Democratic governors in red states like Kentucky and Kansas have been warning of the consequences if Republican lawmakers in Congress do pass this massive budget bill, as they are expected to do a short time from now. Those leaders say it would take health care and food assistance away from Americans who need it most. The bill cuts Medicaid, as we've been telling you, by $930 billion. It also cuts another $285 billion in food assistance. The Congressional Budget Office estimates nearly 12 million Americans
Plus $300 billion to the military and to immigration. That's crazy. That's combined, by the way. They are virtually the same. Like, we are so fucked, dude. It's so over. RIP to the United States of America. 250 years. It was actually mostly shit, not even gonna lie. And we are just going out so sad. No one's gonna save us. And why should they? Like, we fucked up the entirety of the world.
will become uninsured by the year 2034 if the bill becomes law, and 3 million more will not qualify for food stamps known as SNAP benefits. Joining us now is the Democratic governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear. Governor, thanks for joining us this morning. As we've been discussing for the last several hours, it does look like Speaker Mike Johnson has the votes among Republicans to get this bill through, to get it on the desk of the President of the United States, who says he will sign it by the 4th of July. As you read through the details of this massive piece of legislation, what will be the impacts in your state?
Oh, it's going to be devastating. This is the day that Donald Trump and the Republican Party are telling the American people, especially in rural America, that they don't care about us. Now, you look at what's going to happen in my state. 200,000 of my people are going to lose their health care coverage. 20,000 health care workers are going to lose their job. This is the Republican majority firing Americans that right now have a good job. And 35 rural hospitals may close, which is going to impact every single community they're in. What people don't know about rural hospitals is that they're typically the largest or the second largest employer in their communities. So you lose all those jobs. And every small business in rural America is going to be impacted by having fewer people, less dollars cycling through. And then when you think about worker productivity for America, it's going to take a nosedive, because now you got to drive 2 hours to go see a doctor, not just for your appointment, but for your kids and your parents. And when your parent or grandparent gets kicked off Medicaid because they did not check a box, you're going to have to bring them into your own home, take time off of work, and ultimately pay for their medical expenses out of pocket. This is just crazy. It's going to hit Democrats, Republicans, independents. It's going to hammer the U.S. economy. This is the worst bill I've seen in my lifetime.
So
I'm not going to interrupt him ever because he's fucking spitting, bro. I did watch this video beforehand, and literally every answer to his question was incredible. The only thing that I wish he touched on earlier was the amount of people who are going to fucking die because of this. I think that the human toll should be the leading fact, the leading talking point here. Like, Republicans are killing 50,000 Americans every year, and remember, those are American citizens, because, as we know, people who are undocumented cannot get any of these social services. Despite what the Republicans think, despite what their schizophrenic delusions have them believing, this is strictly American citizens who are being impacted by this. But what he's saying is entirely correct. And again, even if you aren't a rural American, you're still going to have to wait longer to see your doctor. Your insurance premiums are going to go up because your dog shit insurance company is saying, oh, well, we have to now pay out more, yada, yada. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, I wish that they would just abolish the private health insurance industry. But honestly, like, it's getting to a point where they're just going to fucking kill you if you actively don't have private insurance. Like, ICE is going to come and kill you if you don't have Blue Cross Blue Shield.
As you grapple with this, what seems to be inevitable, that this is coming your way and to states across the country, how do you plug those holes? As the governor of Kentucky, if 35 rural hospitals are closing in your state, what do you do about that on the state level?
No state has the budget to fix what the federal government that Donald Trump and the Republicans are about to break. No state can make up for hundreds of billions of dollars of Medicaid payments flowing through our economy. If you just look at the economy at large, healthcare is one of the fastest growing segments out there. And this is the Republicans just taking a hatchet to it. We're going to see job losses across America. And listen, we're going to do our best. We're going to do our best to plug some holes where we can. But even when you look at food assistance, which, my faith teaches me that in a country that grows enough food for everybody, nobody should starve. I mean, the miracle of the fishes and the loaves is in every book of the gospel. But look at what they're doing. Seniors and children are going to go to bed and wake up hungry. That's just wrong. And just the administrative costs pushed on Kentucky is an extra $66 million. So you think about plugging other holes. On top of that, you have the president not approving public assistance after natural disasters. That may cost my state another $300 million. So what this federal government is doing is fiscally wrong. It's going to add, trillions of dollars to the federal debt, but it's also going to blow up every single state budget where we have to balance those budgets. And I don't buy for a minute that they have to cause all this pain just for a tax cut. In Kentucky, I've expanded Medicaid, while at the same time lowering the income tax and the property tax rate multiple times.
You don't need tax cuts. You don't ever need tax cuts on the top 1% and corporations. You simply never do that. There was a time back in the 40s and 50s under Republican President Dwight Eisenhower where the top marginal tax rate was like 91%. Every dollar you made over it'd be like $3 million now, is taxed at 91%. Is it a coincidence, do you think, that during that time, it was the most prosperous middle class and the most equitable point in the history of the United States? Do you think that that's like a fucking coincidence? No, dude, it's math. We don't need Jeff Bezos or fucking Larry Ellison being able to, we don't need them having another fucking private jet. We need healthcare. We need more universal programs. We need a more robust social safety net. We need to be expanding these social services, not taking them away. There's never a justifiable reason to cut taxes on the wealthy. It's been 50 years of neoliberalism. It doesn't fucking work. It just doesn't. Trickle-down economics is a fucking lie. It only trickles down in the billionaire class.
Governor, as a governor of a red state, you're a Democrat, but you, by definition, have to work with Republicans. You always have. You continue to do that. How do you explain the vote taken by Republicans in Washington right now in Capitol Hill, all of whom know exactly what you've just said, that it is going to cost their own constituents, the place where they live, the people who voted for them, their health care in some cases, or the hospital that they've counted on for all of their lives? Is it anything more than feeling the pressure from President Trump, who was up all night calling members, who was up all night posting to social media saying MAGA will not be happy with you, talking about his own movement if you vote against my bill? In other words, how do you explain the members of Congress, let's just take your state of Kentucky, voting against the interests of many of their constituents?
Well, it seems like they care more about being a good Republican than a good representative or senator. I mean, they're elected to represent the people of their districts. And for every Kentucky congressman or senator that's voting for this, it hammers their constituents. People are going to lose their jobs that voted for them and that voted for the president. I mean, people have lost their way if they think their number one job is to stick with their party instead of their people. You look at all the congressional delegation that voted for it in Kentucky, every single one has a rural or an urban hospital that's going to get hit. Every single one is going to run into someone that's going to lose their health care and not be able to get a cancer treatment. Every single one has people in their districts that will die if they do not have health care coverage. Listen, I remember when we expanded
this right here, this little piece of the monologue here, that is the appropriate framing on this. Talk about the human cost of this bill. Talk about the children, the fucking children who won't be able to get cancer treatment. Talk about all of the elderly folks who will be removed from their nursing homes because of this bill. Play up the human cost of this. That is what's paramount in this bill. I understand the economic ramifications. I understand that also plays a role. in this. But there are people that are going to fucking die because of this. There is tremendous pain and trauma that is going to be laid upon the families of these people, all because these Republican representatives are spineless cowards who care more about adoration from the president than they do about protecting their constituents. It is beyond shameful.
Medicaid. My dad was governor at the time, and I was in an elevator with him when a woman walked in, burst into tears, and said, "I'd be dead without you, without that expansion." She could not get coverage because they considered cancer a pre-existing condition, but with the expansion of Medicaid and the ACA,
That's
she
fucking
could.
insane, by the way. I'm too young. I was too young at the time to understand like the healthcare system. But yeah, for all of you like Zoomers and for anyone who was born after like 2010, there was a time where you could not get insurance if you had been diagnosed with fucking cancer. With cancer. Like, it's your goddamn fault that you got cancer and not just a thing that your body does. Even still, like, yeah, getting rid of pre-existing conditions in the Affordable Care Act was great. But there needed to have been more sizable reform than just that.
These are real lives at stake. These are real people, and this is a huge betrayal. People care more about their families than they do their political party, and so Democrats, Republicans, and independents in Kentucky are going to react incredibly negatively when their friends are losing their jobs at their hospital.
Governor, it's Ali Vitale in Washington. We were just talking with Ken Martin, the head of the DNC, about how this bill, in terms of the issues that it brings up, is a gift politically in some ways for Democrats to take back out on the campaign trail in 2026. But there are concerns from advocates about the message, this perennial concern that we've heard since 2024. You're someone who has been playing in the space of trying to find different ways of communicating with new constituencies. What do you see in this bill, and how do you think it could be best communicated by Democrats as they head into this midterm year?
Well, as Democrats, we've got to recognize that when people wake up in the morning, they're not thinking about their next election. They're thinking about their job and whether they make enough to support their family. A lot of jobs are going to be lost. They're thinking about their next doctor's appointment and how far they have to drive. It's about to get a lot tougher. They're thinking about the roads and bridges
for Mars mission. What are we doing? What are we doing? Who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck about going to Mars? You want to go to Mars? Go to fucking Arizona. It's literally the same fucking landscape. 930 billion cut to Medicaid, 285 billion cut to SNAP, 157 billion boost to the military, 157 billion boost to ICE, 488 billion cuts in clean energy credits. Like, what the fuck? No tax on tips, overtime, car loans. Who gives a shit? None of this matters, or at least this last bullet point doesn't matter. I'm sorry. $10 billion for Mars missions, dude. What the fuck? Like, it's so stupid.
Community. They're thinking about the school they drop their kids off at, and they're thinking about whether they feel safe in their community, and if they don't have a hospital that ambulance is going to rush them to, they are not as safe as they were before. We've got to talk about the impacts about this bill and the everyday terms of how it makes people's lives harder, and it does. And if you combine that with tariffs and costs going up on everyone, this president has done everything he promised not to. I think he ended up getting elected because people believed he'd make paying the bills just a little bit easier, and it's about to get a whole lot tougher.
Yeah, Democrats are going to hear this, and they're not going to repeat a single fucking thing that Andy Beshear said, even though he is entirely correct with every point that he touched on. People care about kitchen table issues. They're not looking ahead to 2026 or 2028, but they're going to remember what the party in power made them feel like when those elections come around. However, it is up to the opposition party to pull them away from the Republican Party in this instance. Democrats have failed to do that because all of the fucking dipshit consultants are like, no, don't be progressive. Be a diet Republican. Say that you want ICE, but to be gay. Say that you want pro-gay imperialism. You want gay pilots to drop bombs on people in the Middle East, when the reality is people just want higher wages. They want free healthcare. They want to be able to know that there will be childcare for them that doesn't cost $20,000 a year because they don't live near family for whatever reason, for whatever their circumstances maybe. This, what Andy Bashir just said, is the appropriate line of messaging going forward. Talk about the increased cost of living. Talk about how your friends and family are going to be adversely impacted by these cuts to Medicaid. Talk about how people are going to fucking die because of these cuts to Medicaid. That is the appropriate messaging avenue in this regard. Unfortunately, however, people like Harry Sassan are going to hear what Andy Bashir has to say and be like, just be on Twitter, be online, post a TikTok, do a TikTok trend. It's like, be present on social media. It's like, no, dude, that's not, that's, you're missing the point. The point went over your head. The point is to be on social media, yes, but talking about how you will improve the lives of your constituents. We can use Zohran Mamdani as the example because of recency bias, but he ran an effective campaign because he was talking about addressing the everyday issues that people experience. You can parlay that onto a national scale. It is possible. Bernie Sanders has done it. AOC has done it. It's not a secret. Winning elections is not a secret. You just have to be willing to stay clear of what the establishment is telling you to say, because the establishment has an entirely different thought process than any Democrat with a grassroots base.
Democratic Governor of Kentucky, Andy Bashir. Governor, thanks as always for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I cannot understate how absolutely dog shit this shit is going to be for the next couple of years, probably even for like the next decade. The ramifications of this are going to reverberate loudly for many years to come. And it still has it still can get worse. Do not think that the fight is over. Not to sound like a fucking loser, but it can always get worse, very clearly, as we have seen. But there is still the opportunity to get started on building a better future, regardless of how uphill of a battle it may be. However, I'm talking more about this in terms of aspiring politicians, I guess I would say. Do not, under any circumstance, involve yourself with the Democratic Party. Do not align yourselves with them directly. You can caucus with them, you can work with your Democrats, but ultimately they're fucking losers who are maybe not just as responsible for this, but they definitely played a role in it. The Republicans have rammed through disastrous legislation after disastrous legislation, largely because of their dog shit ideology. But the Democratic Party has failed to operate as inadequate opposition to that dog shit. And it's because the Republican Party and the establishment Democrats are all tied to the same donor class. They are all buddy-buddy with the billionaires. They're all buddy-buddy with the CEOs of these massive corporations. And ultimately, the money is more enticing to them than doing right by their constituents and actually being public servants. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out the video for today. I said this wasn't going to be a full-length episode, and yet here we are, fucking 53 minutes later. Everything I'm associated with is linked down below. Follow me on TikTok. Follow me on Twitter. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Stay safe, stay sane, and I will see you guys in the next one.